Hello everyone, hope you're all well, hope you're enjoying the session so far. Thank you so much for tuning into this session. This session is going to be all about total search and what that means and sort of the components of that I'll go into very shortly. But what I want to do first is just start off with a really quick introduction to myself. So my name's Alex, I'm the managing partner for SEO at Dentsu. So that sort of role, what that involves is working with the wider SEO team across the UK to make sure that we are continuously offering the best service for our clients, that we're pushing what we need to in terms of performance, but then also I've got an eye on the future. So part of my role is really understanding what the future of SEO is, what the future of search is. I'm really trying to drill down into that and understand how we can translate what we think that future is going to be into tangible outcomes for our clients and make sure they are always staying ahead of the game with their strategies and making sure they can take advantage of all of the new features and developments that come out of the SEO industry as often does happen. So about me in a little bit more detail. So I've got about 10 years experience in digital, most of that in SEO and most of that in agency side, but I have worked brand side as well. So I've worked for some household names in terms of brands, but then also agency side I've worked with a huge variety of businesses. So I've worked with massive global companies. I've also worked with smaller SMEs and even down to just more local businesses as well. So it means I've got that broad experience across the client set, which means that I can try and tailor my approach to those sorts of clients. I'm also a Brighton SEO speaker, so I've spoken at that conference in the past on various different topics. That kind of ranges from soft skills all the way up to really technical talks on things like log files. My background is obviously SEO, so I started in the industry, more content side of SEO, slowly sort of grew into the wider SEO sphere and really got a handle on technical, and then just sort of grew out from there. So I've got quite a broad skill set in terms of SEO as well. But I have got quite a lot of hands-on experience as well as this more sort of leadership experience as well. So what I want to start off with then is what is total search? So it's a term that some people might use, some people might not. You might have heard it called holistic search or combined search or any sort of combination of descriptions, but we like to term this as total search. And what that is really is aligning organic and paid search efforts to maximise efficiency and share of voice and also meet that user intent. So really aligning anything that it comes under those organic and paid search sort of umbrellas. That's obviously traditional search, but shopping is starting to become a big part of that, and also things that you might have to consider as part of that in terms of like things like performance max. So how does that look? Like a really broad strokes overview of total search. This is how you might see a total search strategy structured. So we've got it in sort of three areas here. So we've got strategy, build, and optimize. And you can sort of see when it comes down to strategy, this is where the bulk of total search really happens. So PPC and SEO aligning on keyword research. So frequently you might find in a lot of places that PPC and SEO do keyword research really, really separately. It's a duplication of the same task because a lot of the data they take is from the same sort of platforms and places. So what we try and do within total search is combine that keyword research, make it one job, make it a continuously updated sort of database of keywords that we hold for our clients, but make sure that is not duplicated or there's no offshoots of that. It's always in one place. It's really efficient in terms of time, and it means that we can spend more time doing the more creative stuff if we are just trying to create those efficiencies in the audience or strategy building phase. Then there's also market trends, so also aligning on what the market trends are for our specific clients, and then any macro trends that we need to consider on top of that. So that's the real bulk of the start of a combined search strategy. And then we also look at the market as well. So we'd look at the competition that we face and the kind of forecasting that we need to do in terms of how big the market is, what our share of voice is for that at the moment, and how we sort of build a case for combined search off the back of that. So really, this stage is the fundamentals of combined search or total search, and it's what feeds the rest of the strategy. But this is where you will find the teams working really, really closely together, because once you get out of strategy and you get into build, you get into things like building campaigns specifically for paid search, but then SEO might diverge from that, and they might look at page coverage, how the site hierarchy looks, the technical hygiene of a site, any content that we need to create either in the form of new pages or actually just adding content to existing pages as well. So this is where it starts to diverge, and we'd come back together after that sort of structure and platform phase, in this journeys phase, and you start to think about, okay, well, what kind of landing pages do we need that will meet SEO and PPC requirements? So whether that is like a specific landing page for a campaign, or whether that is just looking at maybe new products or new categories that need to be built out. And then we really look at how those pages might convert and make sure we build the perfect page off the back of that. And also, thinking about things like EEAT, which is obviously huge for SEO, but a lot of the things that you might do as part of EEAT will also kind of feed into paid search in terms of just improving overall page quality. And then we move back out again into measurement and reporting, and we all have obviously KPIs and targets that we need to report on and measure for different channels. So PPC and SEO will look at some similar metrics like clicks, like revenue, but there might be specific things underneath those we need to consider as well. When it comes to reporting, we like to do that quite together as well, making sure that we do report on the top level view of search, because if we are sharing keywords, if we are sort of understanding whose responsibility is for certain types of keywords or certain sets of keywords, then we have to make sure that we look at that in a joined up view, because otherwise it could skew data across individual channels. And then there's also the real exciting part of total search for me is the experimentation phase. So really looking at bidding strategies for paid search, and obviously looking at keywords that we can include or exclude from the account. And then SEO is really about all the little tests that you can do, like how can we optimize for different SERP features and make sure that we're showing up where possible in all these different SERP features, which is a big evolution for SEO. And then also think about CTR testing, so understanding the makeup of our SERP itself, understanding what our presence is on there and the message that we're trying to send, and maybe how we tweak that to improve clicks to the website. And then all other things like A/B testing and anchor testing on top of that. So that's sort of a really broad strokes look at how total search works. But why do people care about total search? Now, this is something that a lot of people will be aware of, or a stat that may ring true to a lot of people, particularly if you are running quite high value PPC campaigns. But this is a stat taken from Search Engine Land from this year, which says that cost per click is up 13% year on year. In 2023, it was 9% up, so that increase is just continuing. And this is an average of overall of a lot of different industries. Obviously, that will vary by industry. We do have that sort of data available, so if anyone wants to get a little bit more insight into how CPCs are trending in their industry and get a bit more strategic direction on that, then come and speak to us. But one of the things that I find key as well is that there's an increase in things like shopping ads CPC. Obviously, with the advent of PMax and that moving more into shopping over the last year or so, that's really accelerated that increase in CPC. But what it's led to is a lot of brands saying things like, I want to improve my SEO so I can stop spending as much on PPC, or we want to really get to position 1 for this keyword and then we can turn ads off for it. So to me, this is a big misconception that we need to break a little bit for organic and paid, because a lot of people think that if you rank in position 1 for a particular keyword, no matter what keyword it is, you can just turn your ads off and you'll just get all the traffic organically instead of getting it through an ad. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. So this is a screenshot taken from a study, taken from Think with Google, which is taken then from a study that was done many years ago on incrementality in search ads. And essentially what that means is looking at where an organic and a paid ad are present in the SERP, what percentage of those clicks is incremental. So obviously, if there's no organic result as an example, then 100% of ad clicks are incremental because you're not getting anything else from organic. But the interesting thing really is this stat that I've got here. So for search results in the top ranks in position 1, if we have an ad on there, on that SERP as well, 50% of those clicks are incremental, so you wouldn't get those clicks unless you had organic and paid on the same ad for that specific term. So a lot of people think, okay, well, I'll turn paid ads off and I'll have organic searches pick up all the traffic. Actually, you might be losing out on 50% of those clicks that you could have had. And then obviously it looks very different for other sorts of positions. So positions 2 to 4, 82% are incremental. So even when you are considering a total search strategy and actually pulling back on certain terms for paid, if it's not ranking in position 1, then you are losing a significant amount of clicks, or potentially losing a significant amount of clicks. And then when you get to position 5, it's 96% of ad clicks are incremental, which means that there's very little point in taking away an ad, and very little to be gained really from taking away paid search activity. So there is a study that, like I said, that sits behind this. Think with Google have just tried to summarise the key points of that really. And the one thing they do caveat all of this with is that they're averages. All of these reports are taken from averages over lots of different industries, and the encouragement here is for advertisers to experiment themselves. So really understanding how you can test that for your own brand, and not just rely on these averages, because that 50% for it being incremental for position 1 might be 40% for a different industry. It may be even higher. It might be 60%. It all depends on the industry, the makeup of the SERPs. What I will say as a caveat to this as well is that when this data was released was way before we started to see things like AI overviews, or even just some of the more the more prominent search features that we've seen in the last few years, like featured snippets really becoming more widespread, or other features that we can have on the SERP. So it's worth bearing that in mind, and that's why it's always important to test, because we have this data that gives a bit of an indication that having the two together might be really positive, but we don't know what that looks like across different industries. And like I said, we don't know what it looks like with the makeup of the current SERPs. So it's really important that you test those things. So our total search approach, we've got a platform that we actually use called OneSearch that helps us to do this, but we've got a few different areas that we would focus on. The first one is the most simple, and to be honest, when we're talking about total search, it's table stakes. So incrementality testing is the most basic way that you can implement total search at your business for your brand. So there's a few different incremental things that you can do as part of that. So there's brand switch-off tests, so I'll go through a little bit more about how we might do that in a second. Non-brand incrementality testing and branded incrementality testing as well. And it all comes down to basic keyword management, understanding what you might be able to pull back on, and testing what you might be able to save some budget on. The one thing that I will say about all of this in terms of incrementality is a lot of people will turn off their ads and then want to save that budget and just reabsorb that back into the business. My recommendation is a bit different to that. What I would say is, if you can save budget on ads or keywords in certain spaces, just redistribute that budget, because all you're going to be doing is getting more for your money, which means that efficiency is going to be better and ROI is going to be better. So don't think of it as a spend reduction exercise, think of it as an ROI increase kind of exercise, and think of it more in that growth sort of way, instead of looking at how you can save money. So incrementality testing, this is a really basic way of doing it, and one that everyone should be able to do as long as you've got access to Google Search Console and a Google Ads account with enough data in it. So first step here is to use Google Search Console. So this is typically the SEO team that will look into this and identify keywords that you perform well for organically. Now, brand search is a really easy one to start with, particularly if you do have a brand that isn't a more generic name. So if it's really specific to you, then this makes it a lot easier. What you will want to do is just essentially identify all of the keywords that you rank really well organically for. Like I said, mostly brand, but you might have some generics in there as well. What you will then do is take that list of keywords and then work with your paid search team to analyse the data for that in Google Ads. So what we're looking for here is any keywords that have got a really high impression share. So impression share is essentially the top of page impression share, and how much that impression share is taken away from you from competitors. So what you'd be looking for here is realistically 90% plus. You can flex that up and down. 90% plus is fairly safe. It means there's very little competitor activity on that SERP, so it means that you might be able to pull back some of your budget on there if you perform really well organically. And then once you've identified a list of keywords that hit those two criteria, so you rank in position 1 and you've got really high impression share, ideally over 90%, then you can actually start to look at pausing those keywords in your campaigns. So the one thing that you've got to be aware of with this, and I'll put it as a tip here, is to really check your Performance Max campaigns, because what can happen is a lot of times that you're not actively bidding on a term, it can actually just feed into a Performance Max campaign. So it's really important to understand where those terms are coming from, and you might have to take a bit of a creative approach if you are seeing quite a lot of terms that you're trying to move away from in Performance Max because of the way that you have to manage those at the moment in platform. Always worth speaking to your PPC team about how you actually do that. What you will then want to do is take a benchmark of the average clicks across organic and paid for those terms, and then you'll want to monitor that throughout your test as well. So if you remove paid search activity, do you still see an overall set of clicks, or the same overall clicks from Google Search Console, for example, or do you see an increase in Google Search Console clicks as a result, but does it equal the sort of same amount? And keep monitoring that throughout your test. What I'd say is that you will need to obviously run this test for a significant amount of time, and then I put the test lengths will vary here as well, so it depends on the volume of your keywords and your industry itself. But don't just set it and forget it. Keep monitoring that over time. Make sure that you aren't seeing keywords pop up for certain, or ads pop up for certain keywords because they're being fed back into a Performance Max campaign, or some automation is taking place in Google Ads. And really key actually is to make sure your competitors haven't noticed that you've taken your budget away and then they start bidding on it. So again, it's really understanding what you can do with those keywords throughout the test as well. So making sure that you're not losing ground because competitors are bidding, or you're actually accidentally cannibalizing yourself, to make sure the test is fair and to make sure that you're getting the right information you need out of this. And then at the end of the test, if you are seeing fairly flat traffic across organic and paid for those sort of keywords, regardless of the split between the two channels, then you can probably term that as a little bit of a success. The one thing that I would bear in mind is revenue or conversion data as well as this. Now, you obviously can't see for SEO revenue and conversion data at keyword level, but if you see an overall reduction in revenue or conversions from specific page stats, or just in general from your account while you're running this test, that might be a signal to trial putting ads back in to see if that increases conversion rate. Because if it does, then there might be something specific about the messaging on the targeting of the ads that is actually having a positive impact on conversion rates. So something to be aware of, but monitor that at the end, and then you can make your own decisions off the back of it. But there are other parts of the total search approach. So like I said, incrementality is table stakes. It's something that you'll just need to do to get yourself started, and it's something that everyone can do. So you can also look at things like growth. So keyword sharing is obviously part of an overall strategy, but really understanding how you target different keywords with different channels and the bidding strategies around those as well is quite important. Shared messaging is one thing that I think is really crucial for this as well, because what I find a lot of the time is when you go to run an incrementality test, you can look at an organic result and a paid result for the same keyword, and typically the messaging's different, and therefore if you do test that switch off, you might find that the paid search ad has much better messaging than the organic listing that is being presented to users, and therefore it all falls apart really when you start to test, because again, you're not testing equally or two equal sets of results. But also shared messaging in the sense that you can look at paid search and see what kind of messaging is resonating with users based on what ads get higher click-through rates, and you can feed that back into organic, and hopefully that will help organic to improve click-through rates as well. But there's loads of things that you can do off the back of that to try and improve that. And the other thing that I've got as well on here is UX considerations, because a lot of people look at total search and they think it's keyword based, and a lot of it is, because a lot of search is keyword based, but the reality is there are a lot of things that you can do at a page level as well to try and improve performance across the two. So obviously in SEO, the experience on your page is really, really important. It's measured in a variety of different ways for a variety of different SERPs, whether that is sort of the quality of content or the way it meets user intent. But there's also, in paid search, there's quality score to consider. So that is obviously the overall experience of the page. It's made up of a lot of different metrics. So UX is really important for total search, and a lot of people miss this and they think it's not as crucial as keyword optimization, but it can be very, very impactful as well. So you can test things like redesigning pages and really trying to fit into what you think is going to hit the best quality score and really improve experience for the user. And then you can also look at more basic tests like just content optimization and really trying to meet, again, the intent of users through your content, and really try and hit the right notes in terms of optimizing for specific SERPs. And then looking at things like improvements in speed or core web vitals, and how that might improve not just conversion rate, but again, working back to that quality score. So there's different considerations that you can have in terms of UX as well as the keyword focus of total search. So it's always worth bearing that one in mind. But the one thing that I wanted to sort of segue into as we come to the back end of this presentation is the SERPs are evolving. We've seen AI overviews start to come in really heavily in the past 6 months or so in the UK, and then obviously different regions are starting to see those pop up as well, and the US has had those since the start of the year. But it's really important that we understand the impact of that across different industries and different SERPs and different keywords, and understand how we can optimize for that, because there are also things like the new shopping experience that's coming from Google, where we can see ads coming up in terms of shopping ads, but then they also include generative AI in there as well. And then there will also be things that are fed from product feeds, which can be a paid search job, it can be a feeds team job, it can be an organic search job, depending on your sort of team setup. But it's really crucial to understand that total search is going to have to evolve to really fit with these new SERP types. And there's also the user consideration as well. So we've got users that are starting to search in different ways, users that are turning to different platforms than just Google, and they are still search engines in a lot of cases that we need to consider. So it's how we optimize across platforms for our users. But for example, this taken from the Jungle Scout Consumer Trends Report for the back end of this year, we can see that different audiences start searching for products in different places. So Gen Z turns to Google 25% less than Gen X when searching. Gen Z actually over-index in things like TikTok and some of the more social platforms like Instagram and even Pinterest. Whereas what you might see, obviously, within this data is Gen X actually over-indexing in Amazon. So there are other considerations to total search that need to come away from just Google. Obviously, the bulk of volume is still going to be in Google for a lot of places, but it's worth considering this multi-platform approach. So what I'm trying to say here is that total search needs to evolve now to be that multi-platform approach, to meet users where they are, when they need to be met. So getting to them at the right stage of their journey with the right messages, and understanding how your brand can really have a conversation with them at that point, and what they need to see from your brand, whether it's an ad, whether it's an organic listing, whether it's a shopping listing. That's what total search needs to be as a whole. And that's me. Thank you so much for listening to the talk. Hope you took a lot from that. Obviously, this is scratching the surface of total search and what can be done with that. But I wanted to give everyone today a really brief overview of how you can start to think about total search for your brand, ways to get started really quickly, and just give you something to think about for the future. If you have any questions, please reach out to me and we can have a chat about what that might look like for your brand. Okay, thank you very much.